I'm Mike, and today, something about the human condition that absolutely fascinates me, and that is how it appears that we are wired to be able to do pretty bad things that we know are wrong and still maintain a sort of positive self-image that we are still good people. This is a super important force that shapes our dietary choices for the worst, so we're gonna look at what psychologists have to say about how people can do bad things, like commit crimes, and still view themselves positively, and how that relates to our choices in buying animal products and supporting those cruel industries. And I want to start by pointing a finger at myself in the past. It's really interesting for me to think that I still viewed myself as a good person, just as good of a person as I do now, when I was paying people to kill animals for me to eat. I still found a way to put that out of the picture and maintain a positive self-image. There were many mental devices that I used, like euphemisms that allowed me to separate from animals and just the all too common superiority over animals angle, and I'll elaborate on those more in a bit, but I want to get to one phenomenon that I think is such an interesting symptom of this distorted self-image, and that is the better than average effect. From the American Psychological Association, quote, "The tendency for people to evaluate themselves more favorably than an average peer." The craziest part is that the research shows that virtually everybody believes that they are better than average, which is mathematically impossible because only half of the population can be better than average. Why is this so important? Because it means across the board we have completely distorted views of ourselves. And if you believe you're better than someone else, it might be easier to be mean to them. If you believe you're way better than animals, it's certainly going to be easier to eat them. But most importantly, you can still rate yourself highly in an ethical sense while doing a lot of unethical things, and therefore you're probably not going to change. You're probably not going to stop doing those bad things. And it appears that there was a bit of a dunning-kruger effect in terms of morality, the dunning-kruger effect being that those with low abilities also have a low ability to judge their own abilities, and that is that it seems that those with lower levels of morality have less of an ability to judge how low their morals are. That and the better than average effect are powerfully illustrated by this study. Prisoners rated themselves against people who aren't in prison in 9 different areas. The result? They rated themselves superior for 8 out of 9 of the qualities, all except for lawfulness. For example, they consider themselves to be much more honest, trustworthy, loyal, moral, and kind than those who weren't in prison. Is jail a kinder place than outside of that barbed wire fence? No, so we have to ask ourselves if a prisoner can consider themselves more moral than non-criminal people outside of prison, how pretty of a picture can we paint of ourselves? Damn good looking. If it's easier for you, you can just call me Gandhi. I believe this phenomenon of an overly positive self-concept stretches to diet in multiple ways. On the health front, a Consumer Reports survey of 1,200 US citizens found that 90% of people think they eat a healthy diet. They don't, and everybody would agree that the US doesn't, but they still have the ability to tell themselves that they do. And I think part of this has to do with our masterful ability to distort our own memories. As this study demonstrated, we know that we can sort of rewrite or edit memories, but we can also just outright suppress them. Whether that means conveniently forgetting that you ate 5 Hot Pockets at 2 a.m. or had another blackout barbecue, we have an uncanny ability to block out unfavorable decisions. When people talk about where they get their meat, for example, it seems that they always only mention that they eat pasture-raised local farmers market meat and conveniently forget every time that they ate mystery factory farmed meat at restaurants, for example. Or people will just somehow entirely forget that they're eating animals, which is quite a talent. Which brings me back to another way that we feel better about doing bad things, and that is separation, the use of euphemistic language. From Psychology Today's The Science of Why Good People Do Bad Things, they highlight the use of euphemistic language, such as calling casualties from drone strikes collateral damage. And meat eating thrives on euphemisms as well. This is really basic, but just the idea of calling a cow beef or a pig ham just creates such a wall of separation between you and the animal. But seriously, we are so good at this, I'm convinced that if we started eating humans, we'd probably come up with some really nice sounding name with a nice color in it, like Soylent Green. For anybody under 60, that's what the 1973 movie about recycling humans into food called it. Soylent Green, it's people. But moving on, there are more lessons to be gained from criminals, and I think the study of criminals is very useful in this case because all people who eat meat are criminals. Typical elitist vegans. No, but seriously, because I believe that the way that animals are treated today will become illegal in the future, and the ways that animals were treated in the past has become illegal in a lot of countries, and just because doing a bad thing is a bad thing, whether it's killing an animal or committing a crime, and both rely heavily on justification. One shared justification is the idea of externalizing blame to others in the case of crime. Ex-gangster Kevin Dooley, who went from attempted murder to addiction recovery coach, told Vice, "I minimized, rationalized, and justified my wrongdoing to everyone, including myself. My justifications involved blaming corrupt politicians, police, and society." A textbook example of this is how Roaming Millennial recently said that animal cruelty is not the fault of meat eaters, it is the fault of individual workers being cruel to animals.
And I think part of the reason why some vegans treat meat eaters so poorly is that in their minds, the meat eaters are responsible for the treatment of these animals. That ill will should be directed to the people who are responsible for mistreating the animal. The guy who's kicking the chicken, or that guy who was punching goats in one video.
No, this is cause and effect. When meat eaters choose cheaper meat over and over again, that results in faster and faster and sloppier and more cruel production. And another insight gained from criminals, according to psychologist Shad Maruna, the research shows that most justifications from criminals are after the crime, they are post hoc or after the fact, likely to mitigate guilt. And I think this idea is even more relevant to people who eat meat and animal products than it is to criminals, because they actually ended up eating that way without even deciding to. It was often just handed down to them from their parents, and so they have to come up with a justification completely afterwards. It's almost always post hoc. And I think that's part of the reason that there is absolutely no logic used so much of the time, like pointing to completely flat canines as to why we are designed to eat meat, or pointing to how plants feel pain. They were never ever the actual reason that people started eating animals. And now for my favorite thing to do, peering back at our ancestors for some potential answers. It's very possible that we are just simply wired this way because self-doubt was simply a liability in the realm of survival. In other words, evolutionarily, we had a pressure to be able to do horrible things and still function. I have a quick thought experiment for you. Imagine two universes with two sets of cavemen. Universe 1, Kronk hits Rocky over the head with a branch and kills him for making an advance on his cave bay, and then he enters a deep state of depression and can't forage for food or get in the mood. But Universe 2, Kronk hits Rocky over the head for the same reason with the same result, but instead he enters a deep state of cognitive dissonance where he crafts justifications for it while picking berries and reproducing. So which universe is your money on in terms of Kronk passing on his genes? This sort of demonstrates that there might be some survival benefit to cognitive dissonance, but today we no longer need to do those bad things that we then need to justify. So, no longer relevant. And the craziest part of all of this, yeah, I might be vegan and I can easily see the wrong in eating animals and continue to not do it, but I can still see myself falling into these justification traps in other areas of life. One quick example is clothing. While I try to buy secondhand and from companies that have good human rights records, I sometimes find myself buying from places that I have no idea where the clothes are from, telling myself it's just a t-shirt, it's just this once, and I have no idea what the supply chain looks like in terms of the working conditions in the garment factories and things like that. So like the justifications for animal product consumption, my justifications are not valid, so I need to stop doing that. So in summary, there are a ton of ways that we paint ourselves as angels while doing the devil's work. We separate ourselves from animals, we make justifications after the fact, we literally rewrite our memories, and we have a general sense of being better than the average person and just having that falsely positive self-image while doing bad things. Most importantly, this keeps people from changing. It continues business as usual in terms of animal exploitation and other areas. So we all need to become aware of this, and then we need to look at ourselves critically and think about what we do wrong and how to change it, like me buying clothes or everybody stopping eating animal products. All right, that's it for today. I hope you guys found this video useful, and I do have a quick question for you guys. I am making this cookbook, cooking a lot of amazing recipes, but I have no idea what to call it, and I need your help for a good title, so let me know down below if you have any ideas. All right, that's it for today. Feel free to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.